My parents split. My mother fled, and since then we have not spoken at all. When I was 15, my dad, 55M, drew Diane, 50F. She entered the family with her 28F daughter Melissa. Mostly since Melissa was constantly envious of me, we were never close. She simply made matters worse as she disliked my wonderful relationship with my dad, who has always preferred me. Melissa has always shown a little entitlement and spoiling. Diane cuddles her. She has always sided with Melissa no matter how often there has been dispute or argument. Although my dad attempts to remain impartial, it is clear he is closer to me and has caused many issues over the years. Melissa appears to be carrying this chip on her shoulder on the way our dad treats us differently. To complicate matters, Diane and my dad's son Peter, 14M, is my half-brother. Though the family relationships are equally complex, he is a wonderful child. Though Melissa is an adult now and should be able to manage things better, her dad loves him too, and Melissa always feels that she has been pushed to the side. Still, I am a successful business owner, which has simply accentuated the distance separating Melissa from me. She has always been jealous of my connection with our dad and my job. She is a low-level marketing assistant who regularly laments how unfair life is, how she does not have the same chances, etc. I have tried to be encouraging, but it is difficult when she is constantly negative and seeks means of dragging me down. She recently began dating James, 35M, a decent-looking man, but now I'm doubting everything. Even from our early years, Melissa and I never truly got along. Though I suppose it's not unusual for step-siblings to experience some conflict, ours felt to be on a different level. Melissa obviously objected to me from the beginning because of the relationship I had with our dad. She always considered me as competition, hence it was aggravating as I actually wanted a sisterly relationship with her. But it became abundantly evident over time that this was not going to happen. The favoritism of my dad proved unhelpful. He has never hesitated to share with anyone who would listen. He has always been pleased with my successes. Melissa, on the other hand, seemed to be more of a letdown in his eyes, which widened our gulf. Every time something went wrong in her life, she would find a way to point the finger at me or say I had it simpler since our dad loved me more. To be very honest, it was draining. And Diane? No matter what, Melissa's constant cheerleader has been her. Diane would defend Melissa even if she obviously made mistakes. Diane and my dad have had a lot of conflict as well, but he has never been one to squarely face it. To my annoyance, he simply aims to maintain peace, which sometimes means allowing things to lapse. Melissa's jealousy evolved over years into something more poisonous. She usually attempts to minimize my achievements as she has never been happy about any of them. She hardly noticed it when I married Brian and focused entirely on how unfair it was and how alone she was. She laughed at my company when I first started it, stating I only got where I am due to our dad's support. She seems unable to accept my success or happiness, which makes any type of meaningful connection unattainable for us. Notwithstanding all this, I have attempted to keep the peace. I try to include her in activities, hoping it would strengthen our relationship. I do not go out of my way to rub her triumphs in her face. Still, it's never enough. She finds a means to turn whatever I do into something negative no matter what. Since I desire things could be different, it's draining and truly upsetting. My battle with infertility has been among the most agonizing events in my life. Brian and I resolved 3 years ago that we were ready to begin a family. Though our enthusiasm and optimism were high, things didn't go as expected. We visited a reproductive doctor following a year of trying without success, and there we received the news that I have a disorder severely impairing spontaneous conception. Nothing worked. Medications, therapies, even IVF that we tried. Every failed effort felt like a kick to the belly and severely affected both of us emotionally. Particularly since we had always imagined a large family, we were heartbroken. Our relationship has suffered much from it. There were times when I felt totally hopeless and the tension and disappointment were intolerable. Melissa's family is among those who know about our hardships. They were all really encouraging. Though he has never been very good with emotional matters, my dad attempted to be there for me in his own manner. Diane offered to assist with all we needed and was more involved. Melissa first appeared to be empathetic, but that was fleeting. She began making tiny digs and remarks with great depth not long ago. She once asked me casually how fortunate I was to be able to concentrate on my profession free from child responsibility. Especially from someone who understood how much I wanted to be a mother, it burned so badly. She seemed to be enjoying my suffering, which more than I could express hurts. Dealing with infertility is difficult enough without someone in your own family rubbing slaves in the wound. Almost as if she were mocking me, Melissa would also mention her own aspirations for children one day. She would discuss how simple she would find it when the time came, how she would have no trouble getting pregnant, and how she was in no hurry as she had all the time in the world. Knowing what I was going through, I couldn't understand why she would say such things, which were terrible. To be honest, Melissa has always been rather the drama queen. She is single, a low-level marketing assistant, and she regularly grumbles about how her life has not turned out the way she intended. She has always been the kind of person that seeks attention, even if it means blatantly falsifying stories or exaggerating to get it. I can't count the times she has pretended to be unwell. Only the next day when something exciting comes up she suddenly recovers. She recently began seeing James, 35M, and initially I thought it would be great for her. Exactly what Melissa needs, kind, successful, grounded. He seemed to be a decent man. But as the relationship developed, I began to see some warning signals. Melissa has been pushing James to relocate more quickly than he is comfortable with, first of all. Given her past of wanting things for the wrong reasons, her discussion of marriage and children after just a few months of dating seems a tad hurried. Melissa has always had a great need to stay up with me, more like to surpass me. She seems to be unhappy only until she feels as though she is one-upping me in some form. Whether it's with our professions, our relationships, or now considering a family, I have seen it time and time again. It's draining. At one point I'm not sure what more I could do to maintain calm. She has also been known to embellish events seeking compassion. She would make up stories about how harsh her professors were or pretend to have injuries to get out of gym class when she was younger. It's always something, and today it looks like that behavior has persisted into her adult life. She talks endlessly about how demanding her work is, how she feels underappreciated, and how everyone is out to get her. Particularly when you know someone is not being really honest, it can be difficult to sympathize with someone who is constantly acting the victim. James strikes me as a fine man, but I worry about him becoming sucked into Melissa's web. Unlike us, he doesn't know her, hence I worry he could not see the warning signals until it's too late. Still, I'm not very inclined to meddle at the same time. I simply hope things don't spiral out of hand for Melissa's sake as much as for his. Imagine yourself last weekend, fast forward. Celebrating our 5th wedding anniversary, Brian and I also had an opportunity to let others know my company is growing. We agreed to have a large dinner party inviting close relatives, friends, and some business contacts. Particularly considering all Brian and I have gone through lately, I wanted tonight to be memorable. I spent weeks organizing every element, selecting the ideal cuisine, contracting a professional catering company, and even installing some subdued CCTV cameras for security needs. We just had a couple break-ins in the area, hence I wanted not to take any chances. Everything was supposed to be flawless, and I was eager to tell everyone we know our great news. My parents, Diane, Melissa, Peter, and a handful of our closest friends and business colleagues were on the guest list. Given our past, I was a little dubious about inviting Melissa, but I decided it was the proper thing to do. Moreover, I considered perhaps this would be a chance for us to at last get along, even for one evening. The day the party was scheduled arrived, and I wanted things to go without a hitch so everyone might enjoy themselves. Together, Brian and I checked to ensure every element was flawless. The caterers came early, and we laid a lovely table including candles and flowers. I even bought some pricey wine knowing our visitors would enjoy it. Everyone arriving felt as though all the effort had paid off. Starting with champagne and appetizers, we kicked things off and generally everyone seemed to be having fun. Melissa was also being quite friendly, which I interpreted as encouraging. Thinking perhaps, just maybe, things were looking good, I began to unwind and really appreciate the evening. Until dessert, everything was running perfectly. The caterers presented a beautiful cake, and we were about to make our major business expansion news when Melissa abruptly got up. She blurted out that she had some news of her own instead of the toast or anything I had assumed she would bring. Glancing around the room with this haughtiness, she declared, "I'm pregnant, 3 months along." I pledge you could have heard a pin drop. Everyone, including her boyfriend James, who seemed totally blindsided, was shocked. He glanced at her as though he cannot believe what he was hearing. The range of feelings I experienced at that moment, shock, hurt, anger, all of which struck me simultaneously, is difficult for me to even start to explain. Though I have always wanted to make that kind of announcement myself, given all Brian and I have gone through with infertility, I realized that time might never happen. And here was Melissa, grabbing our evening to deliver her bombshell, knowing of my difficulties. Some of our visitors had pitying stares, and that made me wish to vanish. Still, I kept my cool rather than setting out a scene. Though I was dying within, I smiled broadly and complimented her. Although Brian's hand under the table allowed me to relax, I knew he was equally unhappy as I was. Originally scheduled this evening to honor our successes, today it became a celebration of Melissa's pregnancy. I said my congrats, then excused myself and vanished to the bathroom to cool off. I needed 1 minute to collect my ideas and stop the tears from flowing. She stole it entirely from us. It was meant to be our night. Given what we have gone through, I found it incomprehensible why she would act so carelessly. Still, this was Melissa, always seeking to be the center of attention, regardless of cost. Brian and I were still contemplating what had transpired early the next morning. We tried to concentrate on the positives, that is, the nice comments from our friends and the way the business news had been received. But it was difficult to move past the hurt and irritation. Though I hadn't expected to hear from Melissa very soon, there was a loud bang at the door as we were seated for breakfast. When I opened it, Melissa was standing there glaringly angry. Hurrying into the living room, she passed me without waiting. She started a frenzy before I could ask what was going on, charging me for spiking the food at the party to make her sick. She insisted she had been throwing up all night and morning and felt I had done something out of jealousy over her pregnancy. I was totally surprised. Spiking the food? What I was listening to astounded me. She was told that was absurd, that we had professionally catered meals, and that there was no way anything could have been changed. She wouldn't pay attention though. She said that I had to have done something and insisted on seeing the party CCTV footage to clear my name. Melissa was not having it when Brian entered the room trying to cool her down. She was yelling, screaming all kinds of crazy charges, and really I had no idea what to say. That she would even consider me capable of something so sinister infuriated and wounded me. The whole matter is becoming rapidly more dangerous. Should I fail to present Melissa the tape right then and there, Melissa threatened to call the police and press charges. She was behaving totally illogically, and I had no idea what to do. Though another part of me wanted to show her the film merely to shut her down and establish I had done nothing wrong, part of me wanted to throw her out of the house. She wasn't having it when Brian tried to reason with her, saying that perhaps she was simply suffering morning sickness. Nothing we said would make her change her mind. She was sure I had done anything to compromise her pregnancy. Just wanted it to stop. I felt as though I was in some kind of twisted dream. A few more minutes of yelling and accusations later, I at last consented to show her the CCTV film. I thought that was the only approach to persuade her to cool off and leave our peace intact. I called up the recordings from the previous evening and Brian and I guided her to the room housing the film. I kept looking at Melissa as we watched the video, expecting for her to see how ludicrous her charges were. The film captured everything: guests arriving, supper being presented, and everyone having fun. Nothing out of the usual, no odd behavior, and most definitely no proof I had touched the food. Melissa doubled down nevertheless, instead of retreating. She began dissecting every minute detail in the video, alleging that certain attendees appeared uneasy or that perhaps the caterers had done at my request was wrong. She was clearly not going to let this go. She was grabbing at straws. She then turned to me out of nowhere and declared, if I didn't confess to what I'd done, she would take this to the next level. She was discussing urgent charges, visiting law enforcement, and even suing me for what she claimed to have been an attempt to damage her unborn child. Never had I seen her like this before. So enraged, so resolved to have me the villain in her narrative. When Brian tried to step in once more, implying that Melissa might be simply overwhelmed with all that was happening in her life, she was not having it. She was dead focused on having me pay for something I had not even done. I didn't understand why she seemed to be on a mission to ruin me. I became stuck. She would assume I was hiding something if I hadn't shown her the footage, but even with it, she wasn't happy. I had no idea what else I could do to prove my innocence, and the idea of her dragging this out in front of courts or the police horrified me. I simply wanted the whole thing to stop. I was totally lost. I'm thus left wondering, Reddit, how I should address this. Should I keep trying to reason with Melissa, or should I enable her to forward with her threats and handle the consequences? All of this baffles and hurts me greatly. I have no idea what to do. Update 1. Hey Reddit, thanks for the guidance and encouragement. Things have turned wild, and I have to tell what happened next. I chose to attentively check the CCTV footage following Melissa's tantrum to be sure I had not missed anything. Though I expected nothing, I was driven to clear my name and put this entire disaster behind me. Something struck my eye as I was viewing the footage. James, Melissa's boyfriend, stood close to the drink table during the party. It was delicate, but when Melissa turned away, I saw him slide something into her drink. What the fuck was happening? Several times I watched the video to be sure I wasn't seeing things, but it was obvious. James had clearly placed something in her drink. I started to shock. What had he done? Explain why. Though I knew I had to face him about it, I also realized this would cause even more upheaval. I requested James to visit when I phoned him. Though he sounded tense, he agreed. I wasted no time when he got here. Showing him the video, I insisted on an explanation. At first he tried to deny it. But when he realized there was no going around it, he finally admitted. James owned up to having tainted Melissa's drink with Plan B. She had been pressuring him to have a baby, he said, and he wasn't ready for that kind of dedication. Melissa reportedly had been lying to him about using birth control, and he freaked out upon learning of it. In a flash of fear, he dropped the pill into her drink, trying to stop the pregnancy without facing her squarely. I said nothing at all. Her boyfriend drugged her to stop her from becoming pregnant. For actual? James confessed, and I had no idea what to do going forward. Furious, outraged, and even a little afraid of what this would imply for all the people involved. Though I knew it would destroy Melissa, I realized I couldn't keep this to myself. She deserved the truth. I urged Melissa to come over when I phoned her. She was still furious when she got there, most likely anticipating another argument about the meal. But her face went white when I told her what James had done. She first just stared shocked at me without saying anything. She first tried to dispute it, claiming I must have somehow edited the recording when I showed her the video. But the data was clearly there, and finally she had to confront reality. She moved from denial to rage when it sank her at last. She began yelling at James, calling him every name found in a book. She was tossing stuff and blaming him for destroying her life, so it was a full-fledged tantrum. Then in the middle of her tirade, she blurted out something even more startling. She acknowledged her lying about her pregnancy. Fearful James was about to leave, she claimed she made up the pregnancy to try to trap him back into her house. She reasoned that he would have to commit totally if he thought she was expecting his child. I stood absolutely stunned. Here I was believing she was really pregnant and that she had told me at my party out of some sick craving for attention, but it was all a lie, a hopeless, pitiful attempt to control James. And now her lie had exploded in front of her in the worst conceivable manner. Then Melissa turned on me and started accusing me of destroying everything. She said she could have maintained the lie and things would have been better if I hadn't shown her the video. It still astounded me. Even after all she had done, she was still working to twist events to make me the bad guy. My dad and Diane arrived in the thick of this turmoil as if things couldn't get bad. Melissa apparently had called them on her way over, screaming about how I was out to get her, so they came over to cool things up. Still, they strolled in exactly as Melissa was heading off on James. Things were anarchy. Diane launched Melissa's defense right away, asking what I had done to irritate her daughter. Diane would not hear me trying to explain everything. James spiking the drink. Melissa lying about the pregnancy. Saying I had always been jealous and was only searching for a means to destroy Melissa's life. She accused me of setting her up. My dad, on the other hand, first said nothing. After seeing the tape and listening to James, he turned to Melissa with an expression I had never seen before. Not even does disappointment start to cover it. She had done, lying about something as significant as a pregnancy, controlling everyone around her, and then turning on me for revealing the truth, something he couldn't believe. My dad backed me in a dispute with Melissa for the first time. He advised her to accept accountability for her behavior as what she did was unacceptable. Of course, Melissa did not respond particularly well. She began to cry, claiming that she is always the one blamed while I am treated like the golden kid and that no one else ever supports her. Diane took great offense at my dad for not standing up for Melissa. She charged him with deserting their family and enabling me to turn him against them. With Melissa screaming in the background, the whole event descended into a protracted quarrel between my dad and Diane. It was a horrible catastrophe. All I wanted was everyone to go. They finally did. Melissa was still sobbing and Diane glared at me like I was the devil when my dad advised Melissa and Diane to head home and cool off. I was utterly exhausted. All I wanted was a decent anniversary party and business news, and suddenly this catastrophe had my family in disarray. Right now I'm at a complete loss, hence I could really appreciate some guidance on how to handle this. Update 2. Good Reddit, I'm back offering more updates. Since that turbulent day, things have become convoluted, and I am still trying to make sense of it all. Word got around among our relatives and friends once the dust settled from the major disclosure on James spiking Melissa's drink. Though you know how these things go, people talk. I did not want it. Concerned about the situation, business associates and a few close friends contacted me. While some were encouraging, others seemed concerned about how this mistake may damage my company's standing. Given something as serious as accusations of spiking cocktails and lying about a pregnancy, I suppose that makes sense. No one wants to be connected with scandal. Though within I was slightly panicking, I told them everything was under control. Having this drama leak into my work life is the last thing I need. Regarding Melissa, her standing has suffered greatly. Those who attended the party, especially those who personally heard her announcement, are now challenging all she says. She has been avoiding social media, which is unusual for her. Some of her shared acquaintances have also distanced themselves. She enjoys the attention normally, but right now it seems as though she is hiding. Regarding family dynamics, things have become even more convoluted. James split from Melissa soon after everything became clear. Unable to handle the aftermath, he was naturally enraged over being controlled. Naturally, Melissa blames me for the breakup. She says they would still be together if I hadn't showed her the film. Classic Melissa, dodging accountability instead of assigning guilt. About the whole thing, my dad is truly conflicted. Though Melissa's behavior calls for a soft spot for him usually, this time he seems to be questioning it. I never would have imagined him saying that, but he has been discussing severing relations with her. It has severely damaged his relationship with Diane, who is still protecting Melissa. Things between them are, at least, tense, and I worry it may cause further major problems in their marriage. Given all that has transpired, I have been giving legal action against James great thought. Though it was under Plan B, what he did, spiking Melissa's drink, was utterly out of line. Speaking with a lawyer, they advised me that things may get complicated even though they stated I have a case should I wish to file charges. Given the whole affair has gone public, James might countersue for slander, particularly now. It's a lot to consider and I'm not sure if the extra stress is worth it. Melissa has been flitting about threats of a lawsuit against me for emotional suffering at the same time. She is claiming great mental trauma from my showing of the CCTV footage and revealing of her lies. Although it's ridiculous, the attorney encouraged me to treat it seriously should she choose to act. If it comes to a countersuit, we are looking at possibilities. But to be honest, the thought of attending court over this makes me ill. I simply want this dream to fade. To aggravate things, Diane is entirely on Melissa's side. Just ridiculous is her insistence on my dad acting legally against me. Though it's driving a gulf between him and Diane, my dad is happily not entertained by that thought. More frequently staying at our house, he is trying to avoid the stress at home. Though I hate to see him trapped in the middle, I have no idea how to correct it. I am currently attempting to concentrate on safeguarding my company and myself. Just in case things get more intense, I have added more security devices at home and at the office. I have also begun recording everything, every contact, every threat. So I have evidence should this go before court. Although it seems overkill, I would much prefer to be safe than regret. Edit 1. To try to save what remains of our family, my dad advised family therapy. He is eager to mend things with Diane and, I believe, still harboring hope that we may somehow mend our connection with Melissa. Though I realized how much the concept meant to him, I wasn't excited about it. I consented nevertheless. Diane grudgingly consented as well, although Melissa first flatly objected. She finally agreed to one session, simply to hear everyone out, after some persuasion though. The session turned out clearly as a fiasco. The therapist tried to mediate, but Melissa was antagonistic from the time we arrived. She spent much of the time portraying the victim, blaming me for destroying her life and asserting that I had always been envious of her. She maintained that James and her would be happy in planning their future together if I hadn't intervened. It was all about how I had exposed her and about how unfair it was that she was the one suffering as a result. Diane was not improved either. She blamed me for boiling the pot and generating all this turmoil, shielding Melissa at every turn. She even had the gall to advise me to have handled things privately and kept silent about the CCTV evidence to spare Melissa from humiliation. What I was hearing astounded me. I was supposed to simply let Melissa carry on with her lies and manipulation to keep the peace. Although my dad attempted to be impartial, he once lost his cool. Melissa was advised by him to own her behavior and cease attributing her troubles to others. Diane interpreted that as a betrayal, and the two of them descended into a shouting war. The therapist sought control, but it was too late. Melissa bolted, screaming that she was done with all of us, and Diane trailed her out. My dad was seated there looking disappointed at the end of the session. He said he didn't know what else to do and that perhaps it was time to realize things wouldn't get better. He apologized to me. Seeing him so distraught broke my heart and made me understand that this could be beyond safe. For Melissa, things have only gotten worse following the catastrophic therapy session. She lost her job, according to what I heard via common friends. She seems to have had unpredictable behavior, missing work or arriving late. At last her manager had enough and let her leave. Though I'm not surprised, it is nevertheless depressing to see her descend this way. She has also been disseminating online rumors about me. She has been tweeting accusing me of ruining her life and turning our family against her. She even made ludicrous hints suggesting I edited the footage to make James seem bad. Although most people who know the whole truth are not purchasing it, some seem to be devouring it. It hurts, and it makes me wonder whether I should have kept things private, even though I know that would have only served to hasten the unavoidable. My dad is bordering on insane with concern. Melissa has not responded when he tried getting in touch. Naturally upset with him for not supporting Melissa more, Diane blames him for driving her away. Their marriage might not survive this. Things between them are precariously hanging. Diane's hard set against my dad's even talking about stopping Melissa's financial support, expecting it will drive her to get her life together. I am at the very end of it. Though it's not that easy, I have thought about totally severing relations to Melissa. She is still family, and despite all, I find myself thinking about her always. I cannot, however, continue to let her pull everyone else down. I have begun researching legal choices to guard against the falsehoods she is disseminating online. Though my attorney is counseled to write a cease and desist letter, I am unsure. Though I can't allow her to keep lying about me, I also don't want to let things get much more escalated. Update 3. 6 months later. Hey Reddit. After everything fell apart 6 months ago, I at last have some excellent news to report. Following all the tension, turmoil, and emotional roller coasters, something wonderful happened. I discovered I'm pregnant. And it occurred organically, against all chances, not through IVF or any other procedure. Though Brian and I are over the moon, given everything that has transpired with Melissa, we have been careful about who we inform. We agreed to keep it under wraps until I reached into my second trimester. We at last had something to celebrate after years of heartache and disappointment, but concurrently we harbored an underlying anxiety about Melissa's reaction should she find out. Since the whole episode with James, she has been out of control. The last thing we wanted was for her to find a means of ruining this for us too. We have kept the pregnancy under wraps, only informing a small number of close friends and intimate relatives. When we told Dad, he was overjoyed and has been quite helpful. Diane, on the other hand, responded somewhat inconsistently. She seemed a little aloof as well as pleased for us. She still finds it difficult to deal with everything that transpired with Melissa, so it is influencing her attitude to my news. Though there is conflict, Brian and I are emphasizing the good. We have begun organizing the nursery and creating baby arrival plans. At last, being in this place after all we have gone through relieves us. Though I'm trying to be hopeful, I can't say the anxiety of anything going wrong has totally vanished. We knew it would be difficult as we neared the time to tell the rest of the family about the pregnancy. We made a conscious choice not to invite Melissa, even though we wanted to arrange a small private party with just our closest family members, my dad, Diane, Peter, and some friends. We felt leaving her out of it was safer and less taxing after all that had transpired. The day of the conference arrived and I felt both anxious and thrilled. After everyone had finished our modest supper, Brian and I got up to make our announcement. As I told everyone the news, my heart was pounding, but the response was just what we could have asked for. Peter was delighted at the prospect of being an uncle, while my dad was ecstatic and leaped to hug us both. Though I could see she was holding back a little, even Diane grinned and congratulated us despite her recent distancing. Diane inquired whether we had told Melissa, and there was a period of awkwardness following the initial enthusiasm. Everyone in the room was clearly tense, waiting for my response. We hadn't told her yet, I said, and with everything that has transpired, we weren't sure how to approach it. Diane appeared torn while my dad nodded in comprehension. She pulled back, most likely thinking it wasn't the proper time, even though I wanted her to offer Melissa over. With everyone toasting to the new family addition, we ended the evening on a positive note. It seemed like a turning point, as though perhaps we were at last past all the drama and suffering. The news got out the following day. Although we hadn't yet put anything on social media, in our family word of mouth travels quickly. Not long after, I began receiving texts from friends and relatives all wishing well. I knew it was just a matter of time before Melissa found out, even as I was savoring the optimism and trying to keep focused on the happiness of the moment. Later on that evening, sure enough, my dad called. He seemed tense and mentioned Melissa had learned about the pregnancy through common connections. She was enraged, he said, outraged that we hadn't informed her straight and that she had to learn through someone else. He cautioned me that she might show up at our place. He was right. Melissa showed up at our house that very night, exactly as my dad had cautioned. As Brian and I were relaxing from the day and savoring a quiet moment together, we heard pounding on the front door. I recognized it even before I unlocked the door. Melissa looked angry, almost unhinged as I let her in. She launched her tirade without wasting any time. She stated it was obvious I was trying to eradicate her from the family and accused me of purposefully keeping her off the announcement. She continued on about how unjust it was, how she had gone through so much, and how I was rubbing my pregnancy in her face. She wasn't having any of it when I attempted to remain cool and explain that we had kept the pregnancy under wraps for a purpose and that we were going to inform her once we were ready. She persisted in saying that I had done this to pay her back off for what James had done. Sadly, she was essentially rewriting history to present herself as the victim, therefore painting a picture of nothing new. The exchange descended rapidly into a yelling match. As the baby's aunt, she insisted she had a right to be involved and asked to be a part of her life. But considering all that has happened, Brian and I had already decided to create some strict limits. We explained to her that although we wouldn't cut her off entirely, we wanted time and space to concentrate on our new family free from continual upheaval. She finally lost it entirely at that. Melissa began yelling that we were isolating her, that we were attempting to take away the only family she had left, and that she would make our lives terrible if we allowed her to participate. Brian intervened, reminding her she should go and that should she keep threatening us, we would discuss obtaining a restraining order. She hurled herself and slammed the door behind her. Having to threaten legal action against my own stepsister merely to preserve the peace in my family astounded me. Melissa's reaction made Brian and I realize we had to make some difficult choices. We filled my dad in on what had transpired when we spoke. Though I could see he was very depressed by the whole situation, he was not surprised. Although he has always strived to keep the family together, he also acknowledged that this time things had gone too far. My dad totally approved of our choice to impose limits on Melissa. He even advised us to think about temporarily cutting off our interaction with her until she receives the care she obviously requires. Diane, though, told a different tale. She contacted me, obviously disturbed when she learned what had transpired, saying Melissa was only going through a difficult period and that cutting her off would only make things worse. She begged me to rethink. Diane didn't seem to get my explanation, that we were merely establishing limits for our own sanity rather than cutting her off entirely. She insisted that families should stick together no matter what, but I believe she is in denial about the harm Melissa's behavior has caused. Ultimately, Brian and I agreed to carry out our strategy. Melissa is only involved in our life when absolutely required. We are keeping minimum touch with her. At our house, we have also added more security devices in case she attempts another wild pull-off. Though I wanted things to be, I have to give my expanding family's safety and well-being top priority. Regarding my dad and Diane, their relationship is now considerably more tense. My dad has been spending more time away from home, lodging with friends or visiting our house. Diane is still trying to keep everything together, but I can tell the tension is wearing her down as well. Though I'm not sure what will happen with them, I hope they can sort things out without totally separating themselves. Right now, I'm mostly concentrating on my pregnancy and getting ready for our baby to arrive. Though it's difficult when it feels like everything is precariously balanced, I'm trying to remain upbeat and keep the drama at a distance. I simply want to savor this period without thinking about the next family catastrophe just waiting around. Update 4. 1 year later. Hey Reddit. It's been a year since my previous update, and I'm glad life has turned around much needed. A few months back, Brian and I welcomed a healthy baby daughter into the world. Emily is absolutely flawless, we called her. Given all the tension I had during my pregnancy, it was great relief when the birth went well and Emily and I were both healthy. Brian has been a really outstanding parent. He is hands-on with everything from late-night feeds to diaper changes and utterly smitten with Emily. It has deepened our relationship even more, and I would most want to have him at my side. About the rest of the family, things have been challenging but under control. With the continuous drama involving Melissa and Diane, my dad has been a loving grandpa visiting our house practically daily to see Emily. Diane has been trying to be more involved, to her credit. She's been trying to be a good grandma, and I'm trying to meet her halfway to help to keep the peace even if there is still some friction between us. Turning now to Melissa's issue. Following the conflict a year ago, we stayed away as scheduled. Melissa first found it difficult. She kept snapping out on social media and made a few more attempts to get up unannounced. But some months ago something changed. Unbelievably, Diane persuaded Melissa to begin treatment. Though I had low expectations from it, Melissa seems to be at last making some development. My dad claims Melissa has been routinely attending treatment and has even begun to admit some of her prior actions. She contacted me a few weeks ago to really apologize rather than to assign blame or accusations. Though it was a brief note, it seemed honest. She said she was working on herself and realized she had been acting out of envy and hurt. She stated she hoped we might have a relationship eventually, even if it would take time, not asking for forgiveness. Though I was careful to reply, finally I responded briefly thanking her for getting in touch. I told her I'm willing to restore our connection, but it would have to be slow and under my terms. She has thus so far shown respect, more than I would have expected. Melissa seems to be doing well generally and also started a new career. She's not returning to her former self, but she is displaying maturity that I really never would have expected. Though still on guard, I am gently hopeful. Though I'm not ready to let her back into my life completely and trust won't be established overnight, I'm hoping this could be the beginning of something wonderful. I suppose that is it. I appreciate all of your support and counsel throughout the past year. Though it's been an unusual road, I'm glad to have somewhere to share it all. If something noteworthy occurs, I will keep you informed. But for now I'm simply looking forward to savoring life with my small family and seeing where the future leads us. I told my daughter that I would not attend her wedding if her biological father was present, but she now believes that I am stuck in the past. I would appreciate some advice on the current situation I find myself in, and I'm hoping an outsider's viewpoint can offer me some clarity. For some context, about 24 years ago I was sexually assaulted by a close friend of mine and got pregnant by the encounter. I was inconsolable for months after the event. To make matters worse, I found out I was pregnant at about 20 weeks, and where I lived at the time, it was illegal to get an abortion after the first trimester. My husband had really been my rock and my support during that time, and I do not know how I would have ended up if not for him. He said that I could put it up for adoption or I could keep the child and he would raise it like our other children. I decided to not give it up for adoption, but raising the kid was hard. I am half Polish and half German, and he is half German and half Russian. We both have pale skin, light hair and blue eyes, as well as being fairly tall. I'm about 178 centimeters or around 5'10", and he is 191 centimeters or about 6'3". However, our daughter Luna is about 160 centimeters or 5'3", has dark hair and a brown complexion like her biological father. I often heard snide remarks about me being an unfaithful wife because it was obvious that she was not my husband's child. It was especially hard for me when Luna was young because she looked so much like her dad. My husband took care of my daughter most of the time since I had bad flashbacks whenever I saw her face from when I was assaulted. As she grew up, it died down a bit, but I would still get these horrible panic attacks when I saw her wearing boys' clothes and short hair. Since I was prone to having panic attacks, Luna ended up being closer to my husband than she was to me. Also, she often ended up getting a little more than her siblings from my husband as some sort of compensation because of me. We never told her that she was the product of sexual assault because I was too ashamed, and my husband did not want her feeling different from her siblings. I often told her that me and her biological father got into an altercation and never spoke to one another ever again. About 2 years ago, she got one of those DNA test items and found out she had a relative in the system. Said relative got Luna in touch with her bio dad and they started talking despite my protests. He apparently wanted to speak to me about something he wanted to tell me, so Luna attempted to persuade me to speak with him. I made her aware that me and her father should never be in the same room together. Now, Luna is getting married to a lovely young man. Some of the COVID restrictions have been lifted, so she is able to have a decent-sized wedding. The original plan was to have my husband walk her down the aisle, but he had gotten into a bad accident, leaving him in a wheelchair until his legs were strong enough to support his weight again. However, this is not her idea of a picture-perfect wedding day, so she invited her biological father to have the honor of being the bride's father. Her wedding invitation not only invited my rapist, but she totally disrespected the man who raised her. Although I or a bridesmaid could have pushed him down the aisle, she thinks it would not fit the vibe of the wedding. My husband looked so shocked and upset that she would even think of this, but I was furious. I have a visceral hate for that man, and I let her know that I would not be anywhere near him. She told me that this is what she wants and there's no changing her mind, so I told her I will not be attending if he's there. She got upset and told me that I shouldn't hang on to the past, but I laid it out to her that she doesn't know what happened between me and her biological father, so she shouldn't stick her nose where it doesn't belong. Though I feel terrible about what I said and how I said it, and I can't be blamed for her being born or not knowing what happened since I never told her, I still feel as though my wishes should be respected if I say I don't want to be in the same room as someone. I'm now okay with her contacting her father. I just do not want anything to do with him. Also, it's rude to replace your father with another man who you've barely known for 2 years because of something he couldn't control. Can anyone offer me a perspective that I am not catching? Has anyone ever dealt with this, and if so, how? Second post. Deleted by the subs mods but recovered. Before I get started on the update, I have a few things I want to address. A lot of people have questioned me on why I did not tell my daughter that she was a product of sexual assault. The only answer is that I was ashamed of myself. For some context, before I got married to my husband, I actually was very close friends with my attacker. We grew up together in a small community and our families were close. Our parents even wanted us to get together. He was always interested in me, but I didn't give him a chance until university. I broke it off with him and started dating my husband, but I never cut him off because we were very close. He invited me over to drink. This was normal for us, and when I started getting a bit tipsy, he or it PD'd me. I was very traumatized by the situation and tried to get him jailed, but I couldn't. He had a very good reputation, so everyone believed him. Even my own mother, when he said I willingly came over and did it with him. I eventually stopped pursuing because of the social pressure, which only got worse when I found out I was pregnant. I eventually left that place with my husband and kids to live somewhere else. After I gave birth, my husband suggested therapy, but I was scared of being judged again, so I decided to bury it and try to forget about it. I just realized now that it was the worst way to go about this, but it's the only way I knew how to honestly. On to the update. After reading all the advice I'd gotten, I decided that I should stop running away and tell her everything. I called her to come over and she did. I first apologized for yelling at her for her suggestion because in her mind, it was an innocent suggestion. I told her that I wasn't angry at her, but how fast she was willing to replace her father because he was in a wheelchair, and that anger was compounded because she brought up her genetic father. I apologize again for acting childish and not like an adult. She asked me why I am so against her genetic father being in the same vicinity as I am, and I just told her everything from our initial friendship to her forced conception. She didn't believe me, like some Redditors predicted, but I can get a copy of the records of the court case and offer them to her if she needs a look. She looked stunned, like she wanted to believe me but couldn't. I apologized for keeping all this from her because I didn't know how to bring it up. She told me she didn't believe me and would confirm with her genetic father, so I told her to take the time she needed to process all this. Later that day, she came again, crying and apologizing for not believing me. I held her and cried and apologized too. It was kind of therapeutic. We had a long chat and I did feel closer to her. When we were done, she said she wanted to take me out to a surprise to help me feel better in a couple of days, which I happily agreed to. I went to see her yesterday in this little restaurant with a patio that had a private pay-for-use area for a maximum of 4 people, due to COVID. As she ran up to me and gave me a hug, she led me to the patio, where her biological father stood. She told me he was here to apologize and start my healing journey. I just wanted to leave, but he grabbed my hand and all those memories I tried to repress just came back out. I started having a panic attack and lost balance, to which he tried to help me keep my balance, which worsened everything. I honestly don't remember how I left, but I ended up in my car just sobbing. I called my elder son to pick me up because I was not fit to drive at that moment. Today, my daughter called me upset that I ruined her surprise, but I was extremely upset with her. I asked her why she did that when she knew everything that happened between me and him, and she tried to use the excuse of my healing journey, but I wasn't having it. She admitted that she wanted me to get used to him because he's going to be walking her down the aisle along with my husband and doing the daddy-daughter dance. I told her that while I loved her and respected her decision to be with him, I am not willing to be anywhere he is. She started complaining about how she wants all her family to be there, and I'm still not forgiving, but I hung up the phone. My husband is aware of everything and stands by me about not going to her wedding, but I don't want this. If my other children were to know, they would stand by me and tell the rest of their extended family, which is going to lead to my daughter getting disowned by the family. There's no need to give me advice on this because I will be seeking professional aid. Anyways, one good thing to come out of this is that I'm finally confident enough to seek therapy. Thank you for listening to my venting, and for commenting on my last post. Happy holidays. I hope you enjoy it with those who you love. Third post. Hello everyone. It has been a while since I last posted on this website. I have a few new updates for everyone that has been asking me. I apologize for not getting to everyone in my direct messages, but I really appreciate everyone sending me support through those tough times. I would like to share some good news before going on about what happened with my daughter. My husband is able to walk again, albeit with a cane, but it is progress. We have been going to physical therapy to help strengthen his legs after his accident. It's good to see him happy and walking again. I've also been to therapy and met this wonderful and sweet therapist. My therapist is so patient and kind. Since my husband and I started together a few weeks ago, she has been extremely helpful. Bless her soul and all those who recommended therapy. I would have missed out on such an experience, so my thanks go out to all of you. Like most of you advised, my therapist also advised me to tell my other children about what went on between my youngest. For reference, I have 3 other children, 30M, 27F, 27M. My eldest boy is the only one that had a slight idea of what happened, but the other 2 were left unaware. I was quite scared and anxious to tell them what happened, especially because my mother and other family members initially reacted negatively. I invited them over around 2 weeks ago for a family dinner and told them everything that happened with the conception of my youngest to what happened recently. They were all silent and stared at me, so I became a little nervous until my daughter started crying. It was so upsetting for her, and my 2 sons were pissed off at my youngest and her father. They asked why I didn't tell them earlier, and I told them I was just scared of how they would have reacted. My husband took them out of the dining room to talk while my eldest daughter just cried together. When my boys and husband came back, they apologized for leaving early and left. My eldest daughter wanted to spend the night with me, but early in the morning, she left with her brothers to do whatever. I didn't hear anything from them until last Wednesday. I was on Facebook when I saw my elder daughter's post calling out my younger daughter for not only ignoring the man who raised her, but siding with her mother's pissed and re-traumatize her. My boys made similar posts as well, dragging her name through the mud. I had so many direct messages, but I didn't want anything to do with them, so I deleted the app off my phone. Since I don't like people knowing about my personal life, I asked my kids to take down the post. They said they did, but I haven't re-downloaded the app to find out. My youngest husband came to my house with his mother to apologize. He told me he broke off the engagement because he couldn't be with someone who treated their parents like that. His mother let me know how disgusted she was with my daughter's actions, and someone like that would never be a part of her family. I was honestly stunned by all the support I have received. It's one thing to receive support online, but receiving support in real life was surreal for me. I am a bit disappointed because I wanted my daughter's former fiancé to join the family, as he is a lovely and sweet boy, but he has boundaries in a relationship that my daughter unfortunately crossed. As for my youngest, she is furious with me. She sent me a nasty voicemail saying that I ruined her life. Her friends and fiancé basically cut her off. Needless to say, I felt terribly sorry because I had attempted to avoid this situation at all costs. I went through what she is experiencing, and I know exactly what it feels like. I told my therapist about this, and she told me that the difference is that while I was the victim, my daughter brought it on herself. My therapist is probably right, but I can't stop this feeling of dread. I tried to call my daughter, but once I heard her father on the line, I hung up. He took it upon himself to let me know that my daughter is depressed because of my actions. I feel terrible for treating my daughter like this. My husband says that I should focus on myself, and I'm trying to, but I just can't stop worrying. I don't think that my daughter is safe when she's with her biological father. This is all that's going on in my life right now. For all those asking, thanks for listening to me, and thanks for the advice again. I really appreciate everything. My family is trying to make my golden child sister the bride at my wedding. I'm planning my revenge. I'm getting married, and my family wants my golden child sister to go down the aisle in white. I'm going to take my revenge. Here I am, writing this lengthy story on my vacation, but it seems cathartic to finally get it out. My hubby is more enthused about this than the resort drinks. This is a throwaway because I don't have a Reddit account, and my spouse, the Reddit fanatic, has stated that he does not want this affiliated with him. As for why the Reddit person isn't writing this, he said that because it's my family, I should be the one to write the tale, but he's over my shoulder to help out. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not sure how this works, but I do not give permission for this to be reposted anywhere. I believe it is vital to provide some context to explain how this behavior escalated and why our responses were as they were. I am sorry for the long read. My parents have always shown more affection for my sister. I do not mean in subtle ways either. If my sister accuses me of something, they will believe her and punish me. They wouldn't believe me if I accused her, even if I had undeniable evidence. They'd still give her a lighter punishment while simultaneously scolding me. My birthday cake had to be the flavor she preferred, hers did not. My parents always denied knowing I disliked that style of cake. They always paid a little more for her than for me. We went where she wanted, even though it was an occasion that was supposed to be about me. My sister grew up pampered and disliked me. She used me as a punching bag. She generally ignored me at first, but when we were early teenagers, things got pretty ugly. I'm not sure what caused it, but she lost all of her friends and her conduct deteriorated. Did her buddies relocate? Did they leave her because she was mean? I don't know, because we were never close, and my parents loved to brag about her accomplishments while never mentioning any problems. Unlike me, they enjoyed continuously pointing out my weaknesses as taunting material. I just knew she had none because we went to the same school and I observed she was no longer roaming around with other people. Anyway, she didn't have any friends. I did. I used to be fairly popular. My sister noticed this, and I went from being an occasional punching bag to a despised somebody she had to eliminate at all costs. She began accusing me of more of everything. She charged my friends with numerous transgressions. My parents stopped letting me hang around with anyone. Their explanations ranged from "they're not decent people according to your sister," to "why are you attempting to leave us? Why won't you enjoy family time and be like your sister?" Extended family gave me something to prevent total solitude. My cousins and I got along despite minor age disparities. Most of my relatives resided in the same town. They invited me over to something at one occasion. I regrettably said, "I'm not allowed to go anywhere." I don't recall what. My child self, without thinking through it, said that it was because I wasn't allowed to have friends since my sister didn't have any. That got to the grown-ups, who supposedly split my parents apart later. It was worth it even though I was grounded, as if I had someplace to go, for a month and was chastised for lying. After that, they let me some freedom. And my sister started a different school. She begged to be changed, and I suppose the humiliation of extended family knowing her socio-economic level was terrible. Though it cost more since the school was further away, my parents complied right away. At the new school, though, she befriended others. She never returned to the former norm of largely ignoring me, though. She never let me go. I suppose she was enraged that I informed her family she had no friends and felt the power of how badly she could screw with me. My life continued to be miserable. Her pals would visit and harass me, and my parents would label it light teasing. My parents were terrible hosts to friends, so I never invited anyone over. My sister would accuse them of pilfering items, and they would believe her. My parents never dared to do any of that to relatives, hence I did get close to my cousins. I then landed my first boyfriend. Though my parents pushed, I absolutely wanted not to bring him home. We were split once, and he came to locate me, informing him that my sister was flirting with him. She meant she arrived in under-fitting clothes, battered her lashes severely, and began telling him how horrible I was and how good she was. Angry, he bolted off to locate me. Naturally, my sister told my parents a different story, that my boyfriend had tried to flirt with her, but she had naturally objected since, how could she do that to me? Try to guess what my folks thought. My guy was not perfect now, but I accepted him right away for a cruel reason. But keep in mind that I was a teenage victim of harsh treatment back then. Originally disliked my sister as much as I hated myself. I was extremely resentful and moody. Having that disclaimer clear the path, let us now discuss appearances. They weren't relevant, therefore I hadn't discussed them yet. Since my sister loved displaying love by food, giving you more food, buying sweets, etc., my sister was also overweight. My parents were overweight as well. Whereas I am not now and was not. Actually, I have always been really slim, as punishment sometimes meant no snacks or treats. Obviously, personality is what counts. Weight is not. Even then though, my sister was already spoilt and unpleasant. She never learned to work for anything since she could demand and my parents would supply. Hence even her flirting efforts were awful. Not to mention that she didn't seem like some beautiful model. Not even my self-conscious young self thought my boyfriend would attempt and cheat on me with her. My parents forbade me from dating such a bad lad, nonetheless. Though it was difficult, I did try to keep going in secret until the relationship broke. I did have another boyfriend, but once more, my sister claimed was flirting with her when he turned down her attempts. Once more, my parents believed her. I attempted pointing out how this happened once more, but they concluded that indicated I was incapable of making wise decisions and constantly choosing lousy mates. The relationship fluttered out once more, unable to manage the Romeo and Juliet scenario. In high school, I would eventually be called names, as I was okay with making out with guys and things but refused to form relationships. Luckily, it never got back to my parents or sister. Now, my sister did bring one man home over all this period. Until he stopped coming up, my parents spent every second reminding me how terrific he was and why I couldn't be like my sister and get myself someone like that. He was paraded with pride. He became suddenly a cunning bastard who misled my sister. Well then. And the unfair treatment carried on. She had more spending money at this time, her curfews were far better than mine, and she could go any place at any time, whereas I was not free to. If I brought it up, my parents would claim it's because she's older. But I still didn't get the same treatment until I reached that age. Pointed out, they denied they ever stated that, or claimed it was because I couldn't be trusted like she was, citing my poor judgment against my partners and friends as evidence. Time passes and my sister's graduation is approaching. She had no scholarship or anything. She was admitted into a college, not a particularly esteemed one. Once more, I'm not sure which universities she ever tried for, as only her successes were reported to me, hence I can't say how poorly she was turned down. She had poor marks in the classroom, though, since we would always celebrate any time she received a B. Usually I would obtain good marks, but my parents objected to celebrating since I always got those and asked what celebration would be appropriate. My parents assured my sister they would pay for everything and naturally made a lot of fanfare for her. She would be leaving, so relieving me, not that it would simplify my life. Every other weekend, she would always return home. Still, some item vanished from her room or some other problem she would consider to bring my life terrible. My curfews still were rigorous, etc. Finally, my mother came to discuss my approaching graduation. My sister is 1 year older than I am. She advised me to start working right away after graduation and wait until my sister completed college to see if they could afford anything for me, since they were paying for her schooling and had no money for mine. Oh, and if I stayed at home I would have to pay rent, part of the bills, and all my stuff. I mentioned I may apply for school loans. Mom answered yes, except not quite. That is because I had such poor judgment and they would evaluate whether or not a college was worth my getting in debt on, given their extreme compassion for me. I didn't ask, but I'm not sure how they would ban me from acquiring loans. Scholarships were not mentioned. They never believed in my ability either and had no idea what my grades were now. I did not blink at all. I said just okay. My mother continued to push, plainly not expecting that. Perhaps she wanted me to act out so they might have a justification for never ever paying for my college. I only stated, though, that I appreciated their concern and that I understood their viewpoint. Later, my dad tried the same, but I too refrained from showing emotions. You see, I never had any aspirations regarding my schooling after a lifetime of their horrible upbringing. I knew they would find a means to avoid paying for mine and ruin my life. Working and waiting for my sister to graduate never convinced me they would finally pay. I had long been getting ready for college. I had plenty of time to study. My friendships were few and I could hardly get out. And I studied as I saw my sole opportunity for freedom in college. When the time arrived, I worked assiduously and was awarded a scholarship. Not to some place like Ivy League or anything like law or medical school, but it was a good enough course in a solid university with a full scholarship. Knowing my sister would object and try to stop me using my parents, I posted my success on social media. I told them at the same moment, even made myself thank them in the post under duress. Now they would have to explain to the family why not, so they cannot stop me from leaving. They were first even somewhat proud and boasted about it. Then I suppose my sister arrived, and they shifted gears, even asking whether I was sure I wanted to go. They let out that my sister wasn't doing well in college. Since she was brighter and had better judgment than me, I would suffer more. I certainly stayed to my guns. Though they couldn't do anything, they were not happy. My savers were college. I began to find happiness. I still visited on holidays and such and spoke with my parents, but since they refused to pay for anything, I could explain not going a lot due of money. I skipped introducing any man to them during this period, and my sister quit attending college. She didn't graduate, since once more they would have made a hoopla over it. She returned home paying no rent or bills, but it's different, my parents noted. She began working for the same company as my mother, clearly because of her string pulling. I bought all of this to feel proud. Oh well, practically there, I swear. About this time I met my husband. You know those folks that claim, if I were in X situation, I would have done something. The kind that actually does is my hubby. I'm the type that is meek and a doormat in every circumstance. Then I find myself unable to sleep at night wishing I had done something, considered something clever to say, etc. It is me that finds myself crying uncontrollably when I am furious. My hubby is the one that instantly claps back. He enjoys resolving drama as much as its production. If he doesn't react right away to a minor, you should start worrying, as he won't forgive and forget. he is merely acting in a worse manner in payback. Though he wanted me to post on a nuclear revenge board as well, he insisted what we did wasn't nuclear. People were perplexed when I got acquainted with him, yet it didn't mean I didn't enjoy it since, thanks to my background, most likely, I was unable of acting like him. My husband treats people kindly as long as they treat him the same way, and I adore that he does what I cannot. When we talked about marriage, we agreed that our budget would not allow us much interest in the ceremony. Instead, we would much prefer spend on a dream vacation to Europe for our honeymoon. Regarding where to conduct it, we chose my hometown since his family was scattered and mine was still primarily concentrated there. We weren't living too far off either, so we could handle things by going on occasional weekend-long visits. There was also some work flexibility, so, should necessary, we could spend some time at my hometown. A few months later, we issued the save the date and the engagement announcement. Well, at this time my folks naturally insisted they meet my man. I wanted to reject but was having trouble growing a spine. The distance had caused me to wonder maybe my folks weren't all that horrible. When I told my spouse, he looked like I canceled Christmas. At least I would guarantee they never left him alone. See, he had been getting ready for this. He even purchased a top-notch recorder he could hide in a pocket to capture everything. Driven, he considered all the ways he might turn down my sister's efforts, offend her, then forward the tape of her attempts to my family. So out he went alone and eager to see them, then returned later ecstatic. Babe, darling, the terrible things they yearn for would astound you. Babe, there are so many possibilities. We can screw them over so horrible. Though I wanted to hear the recording since I was perplexed, he wisely advised me it would be preferable to listen to him first, otherwise I might misinterpret him. He visited, and instead of the flirting, my sister and parents sat him down. My judgment, etc. They declared they were ready to pay for my wedding on one condition: my sister would walk down the aisle first, in a wedding dress, after some grumbling about not being comfortable with him. Their justification was that it was only fair if my sister got at least the experience of it, at my venue, with pictures being shot, in the dress, and she would have a cake later too, etc. It was not okay for a younger sister to marry first. My husband will type his part now. Hey, here's a resentful hubby. When his lover is mocked, hell hath no wrath like a pro-revenge, instantaneous karma, nuclear revenge lurker. Having said that, even if my wife, who is now my wife, paints me as this quick-witted guy, I admit my neurons all but short-circuited when those people legit proposed. Like, some sort of fantastic present, even Troy would rather take in the horse a second time, methinks. After my brain reset, I did have a huge repertoire of insults ready to pour forth, but something in my soul whispered in my ear like the devil, string these along. I then claimed I had to consider how my fiancé, back then, would respond, and then hurried out before I could reveal my sinister intentions. Now back to me, the wife. With a smile on his face, my husband then truly related how my parents wanted even my wedding to be about my sister and had the recording to back it up. I looked surprised. The distance had eased their treatment of me, and I reasoned even they wouldn't travel so far. Fortunately, my husband's insistence on the angle of revenge prevented me from entering a negative headspace. We had a great time brainstorming ways to screw them over, ideas ranging from shockingly crazy to what we felt was practical. When we settled on a strategy, we then phoned his much more level-headed sibling. It included 2 venue addresses, giving the incorrect one, etc. Level-headed brother chastised us for this though. Although he admitted he would never be able to persuade us against revenge, at least he showed us anything like that would be difficult to execute. Among our other suggestions, several ran the danger of getting us sued. We finally decided on the most benign course of action. Follow our agreement, then pay security and forbid her access. Clearly, if that was it, that would not be pro-revenge. Mostly my hubby, but here goes since he wants me to do the honors. Just crucial to note, everything he accomplished was already covered with me and reflected our shared opinions. He returned to my parents, asked questions, then concluded I wouldn't be down with it. He didn't see the problem though, and his desire for family to remain intact would be in line with supporting them through that process. He noted that I dislike conflict, hence if I were shocked with it, I might not act out in front of all the people. Conversely, marriage is really important, so who knew if I would lose control? He so proposed a compromise. They would assist with expenses. In this sense, I would be even more under pressure to say nothing, since not only would we be in public with our families there, but I would be appreciative of their help, which would calm me. It was acceptable as my grown sister started skipping with delight, actually, like a child, while my parents seemed surprised. Important, my husband also claimed that, due of some horrible judgment in lovers in the past, these phrases were all my idea and I'm so proud of using their words against them, haha. I was distrustful and controlling and wanted to check his phone and whatnot to guarantee he wasn't cheating on me. This made it absolutely necessary that nothing of this strategy was ever documented. He would go over to their house to discuss any topic related to my sister coming down the aisle before me. And so started the months of lies in which my husband and I were milking my parents and sister, while they thought they were fooling me. How can this be achieved? Of course, my parents wanted input in everything. Not pay for the wedding and lay quiet. My husband would persuade me to let go of some things that meant a lot to me, like the music and color palette, so keeping me in line. But everything else was fair game. We never really cared for the ceremony to start with. We would visit, say, to review the drink and menu selections. We would then accept the lowest or second lowest price choice. Then my husband would surreptitiously bring my sister there to also try it, then sigh and remark, "It's a pity we don't want to abuse my parents' goodwill, so we wouldn't get the best option." Cue my sister insisting my parents pay for the best. After that, my parents paid for the most costly and would reassure me not to worry. Same was done with the flowers and photographer. My husband unhappily told my sister that I wanted some other tasteless flowers after handing her a bouquet of the ones we wanted. Cue my parents informing me they would pay for such flowers and wanted us to accompany them. About the wedding dress, we run across a small hitch. Though it wasn't my style and wouldn't look well on me, my parents wanted me to wear an awful dress. Okay, not overtly hideous. Our idea was to say okay and then not use it, but my mom messaged me about it so there would be evidence I said okay. We had to follow me steadfastly and in text rejecting. Going over there, my husband stated he would see what he could do. My sister advised destroying my intended dress so I would have to wear the other one. He answered as though he agreed. They truly kept communications outside any text throughout all of this. We made sure that happened by having me respond anytime my sister tried messaging my husband. They believed that and never risked anything in writing since this confirmed the I'm controlling and neurotic allegations my spouse was making. Though I'm such a doormat that the idea of being represented as controlling and dangerous is rather humorous to me, maybe some individuals might not appreciate the idea of their partner going around and talking poorly of them to family. I encouraged him on to do it. I suppose I have a distorted sense of humor, laughing here. Oh, and my sister did try to flirt with him, but he responded conflictedly also to truly sell that he was with them. Though he never told them we hired security, my husband would act to tell them information without my knowing. That was really humorous. Having really thought about a courthouse wedding to save money for our honeymoon, my husband and I ended up having an ostentatious, costly wedding and hardly spent $1. From my parents, we dubbed it back pay for emotional damages, LOL. I believe my husband. Okay, he just acknowledged I'm right, was more enjoying the whole deceiving them than he did organizing our wedding, LEL. Here we are, not as though I would have imagined it imaginable to see a man grinning at the idea of squandering his whole Saturday driving to talk wedding preparations with his in-laws. Not too far off was the day. My parents, sister, and husband had devised a strategy whereby one waits until everyone is seated. The bride always arrives late, hence they would have my sister arrive at that exact moment to avoid me seeing her and trying to stop it, and she would walk down the aisle. It would be too late to act by the time I found out. Regarding my dress, we preserved some of the extra fabric from my dress changes. My husband brought that to my parents' house. My sister still resides with them, even now, and presented it as evidence he had destroyed the garment. Then he stated he had to get back to me as I was fuming and he had to cool me down. She would see them at the wedding. Initially, we made sure to keep our actual security under wraps. All the visitors and my parents could see as they came was a woman with a name list to cross-reference. We brought out security, a man looking like a bodyguard, only once my parents came and sat down. We advised him not to let anyone, especially my sister, in, and even agreed on a nice tip should he fail to disclose our scheme. Not too long later the time arrived. My dad went and encouraged people to start since my parents received a text saying my sister was less than 5 minutes away. Originally instructed to follow his direction, my bridesmaids obeyed without consulting me. My dad waited at the door as though waiting for me after everyone descended and replaced each other. One buddy not in the wedding party texted me throughout this to get ready. This was because people would notice if my spouse or bridesmaids, etc., pulled out a phone and started texting. This friend was in on the plot. She's my husband's friend, and she didn't care about being a bridesmaid or anything. She was ready to assist stir drama as he is. The bridal song started playing as soon as my dad settled in. The doors opened and I followed in. At me being there, my dad became pale. He tried peering behind me, but he couldn't see the venue entrance from where we were, so he was unable to ascertain what happened to my sister. His phone then started to ring. Her was the caller ID I noticed. He merely left me there. Whispered. Something came up. Around there were gasps and uncertainty. The buddy in on it inquired loudly what had happened. Lying, I said, in a sad voice. He told me it wasn't supposed to be me there. Although he said nothing, my husband and I decided that I should tell him to appear the worst possible should he dare leave me. Regarding the tears, I wish I could claim it was only my great acting, but no. Despite all, a part of me didn't think he would go as far as to abandon me there. Though only a clever joke, I felt the sister thing was untrue. Unknown. I was hurt, still am, so I was truly trying not to cry. Then the friend yelled, "What did he mean by it shouldn't be you?" So that as many people as possible might hear and disseminate it. "I will go and check," she remarked quickly and hurried off. We decided to do this so she might create hell with the security and block my dad from returning to halt the ceremony or whatever. My mother also departed eventually. My husband's dad hurried over at this point and grabbed my arm. He had been informed he might have to. I started to smile seeing him sprint to me. Walking down the aisle to whispers, I listened to people talk about what transpired. Some presumably left to also check. Still, all was good when I got to my hubby. Joking that my depressed expression was so real I deserved an Oscar and not to worry, he would sweep them over the coals for what they did, LOL, and help me feel better. We tied the knot without incident. My parents did not return. During the celebration, I did observe a lot of individuals leaving and then returning. None of them ventured to tell me what was happening. My husband left after someone came to speak in his ear. After some while, he returned with a stormy look but whispered in my ear that he had to hide somewhere before he broke character and started laughing. LOL. What happened is it went right. From friends, relatives, the security guard, and my spouse, the following is the combined story I got later. My sister did show up wearing a bridal dress. By our arrangement, the security turned her away. Since there was already a bride, he said she should be in the incorrect place. Indeed, we gave him quite good tips as promised. Claiming he never known him, thus he couldn't be working there, my dad went there and attempted threatening him with the police. The security agreed to the police as he was engaged by us in performing his duties. By then my dad knew it would be too late and tried to insist he let my sister inside. By now the friend arrived, began yelling and disparaging my sister and asked what was going on, basically stalling. Shortly later, my mother arrived. Later on others too. The wedding scheme was busted this time. Now all my parents could do was damage control since everyone who knew about it would attempt and pull it, yelling and berating them. The three naturally said it wasn't a secret and threw my spouse under the bus. My hubby called at this point. He presented his finest confused and denigrated appearance when he arrived and denied. Gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss, LOL says, quoting him. He claimed never to have agreed to anything so ludicrous. He sought evidence when they insisted he did, and naturally they couldn't find any. Every SMS exchange they produced focused on typical wedding decisions. Apparently sitting on the floor thrashing her legs like a toddler, my sister was scream-crying. Though security and other people held him back, my dad seemed like he would have beat my husband. They said, of course, they lacked evidence as my husband advised them against texting. Laughing, my spouse remarked, "Wow, how convenient, huh?" Then he reiterated, why would he ever agree to something so absurd? He tore them a fresh one about being terrible parents, then turned back to me saying he wouldn't let their dumb ideas and lying ruin his wedding. Nobody thought they true. Although the location has cameras, they refused to show me the tape since that was just for security needs. Some others, though, recorded portions of it. It was amazing to see everyone who came out to watch the drama break apart my parents and sister. One of the finest wedding presents was seeing them have taste of their own medicine after years of being accused of things and not believed. While my sister was still on the floor screaming and wailing, my mother was crying and my dad was switching from purple to white. People were questioning, why would my husband agree? They insisted my spouse was in on it. Why was there no evidence? Why would they want my sister to act in this way with my wedding? To any of it, they had no decent response. They had no choice but to leave when they were eventually instructed to. Apparently, my dad had to drag my sister up since she wouldn't leave the floor. Once more, folks said nothing to me all night. I suppose they wanted to spare me, maybe because I was the bride and not just a guest for once, but it did felt like everyone was especially trying to be friendly, upbeat about everything. LOL, my hubby believes all the pricey food they were consuming really helped. We had a fun. For only a few period, my spouse kept the feigned angry expression before flushing in smiles once more. We then visited the hotel to catch some sleep before starting our honeymoon. Speaking of which, we rejected since my parents tried to pay for our aircraft tickets, but we felt that was dangerous as they could attempt and cancel them or something. Of course, the three have tried to get in touch with me throughout that entire process. I turned away calls as my husband insisted on maintaining a paper trail. Smart thing, since my sister messaged me finally. She blamed me for her humiliation. Called my husband a two-faced snake that misled her for months. She wants to print and put that on our wall, LOL. And hoped, but was also sure, that I would be cheated on by him. It was quite unhinged and lacked much sense. She also implied he was cheating on me with her. My husband actually grabbed my phone, screenshot the call records, screenshot my sister's message, screenshot some messages from my parents asking I pick up the phone, and shared all of it to my family group chat. He continued up the deluded I never agreed to anything act and even threatened to sue them for slander and harassment, while sending screenshots of messages to him whereby they called him names and threatened him. As I was being tormented by them continuously, he sent a note pleading my family for help on said group chat. Then finished neatly with a demand that they not share our locations to avoid my parents sending my sister over and claiming he had somehow agreed to pretend to her in our honeymoon suite, then begged family to help stop them from trying to ruin my honeymoon now that they had failed to ruin my wedding. My family reassured him they would take care of it. Since then, we have had quiet. My sister's non-compliance disappointed my husband, who then tore her a new one and told another about it. We'll find out if it holds true. All in all, even if I would definitely like a normal, loving family at my wedding, at least once in my life, they not only failed to damage something significant to me but also helped me to get it back. Extra information. Why did they treat me like this? I suppose you all will think the same, as I've asked this question quite a lot. I still ponder this. I have wondered this all my life. I tried asking when I was little, but they denied any difference and chastised me for acting spoiled, so I gave up. Though I have various ideas, based on what I have seen, I believe it to be this. I was not supposed to be. After so long, they were wanted not just but also like a miraculous child, as they took some time to have my sister. Given our age gap is really little, I believe they didn't use enough protection much too soon after my sister's birth or expected to have a child so quickly or easily. Perhaps they were stuck with an unplanned kid while still adjusting to a newborn, since they didn't know my mom was pregnant until it was too late. They disliked me since they are not very wealthy and the additional cost probably did not help. That is only my speculation though. Still, I have acknowledged the response won't really matter. Whichever they did to me, it was unnecessary. Actually, did they believe this would work? After our conversation, my husband and I developed the opinion that they absolutely never wanted to do this at all. They presented my spouse that ridiculous suggestion. We believe my sister pitched a fit over my being married first when she hardly gets dates. They didn't want to pay for my wedding and didn't think we would accept, or that it would even look good for them to do. But by suggesting it and being turned down, they could look like the kind guys to my sister while having a justification not to pay $1. My husband then agreed though, and they couldn't undo or else run the danger of my sister turning on them.